Good morning, Scott McGrath. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning.
We're down here at the county landfill. It's a bit noisy, but this is one of your art displays.
That's right.
And you want to tell me a little bit about it?
These kind of got started during Earth Day. They would have a kind of a little shindig here at the dump, and so the first year I kind of made some
Earth Day?
Earth Day, yeah. And they used to have some displays about like how to recycle, and so I showed up and just made an artwork one year and had it raffled off to anybody that came, and then the next year we just decided maybe I should make something and keep it here. So so every year we'd come and make a new one and just pull stuff out of the dump and create some interesting thing, and that way everyone in the community could enjoy some kind of art.
It's the most public art display in Mariposa County.
Yeah, this piece started quite a few years ago, and it was sort of started off with these 2 feet, and it was sort of like a anthropomorphic piece with a head, and sort of like at some point Christian Gunther, who had a glass shop up in Mariposa, he made these glass wings, and we put those on there, and sort of a Hermes kind of character. So it's sort of like the bulk of all this stuff going on in the center. Sometimes on some smaller pieces they start off as like a sketch. You just found this old wagon wheel ring and got some car parts. These arms look really interesting together. So it's like sort of look like there's something in the center revolving or turning. Sort of just like a drawing in metal. So this is an interesting piece. I worked for a woman that made sculpture, Susan Webro, and she started this piece. She's got some pieces in some museums, and she abandoned this piece of sculpture, and so I brought it here. It's kind of a little time capsule of something she did. So this piece kind of started off with like, it was kind of a sketch. There was this arc and this circle, and it was just sitting around for a number of years, and then it fell over, and I went to go fix it and added some more, so it's kind of making it grow, and that was kind of revolving. Be an animal, like a burst of energy. So this sculpture kind of stayed fairly simple, but it's got this icosahedron hanging off it, sort of like a little gesture, like a little organic movement around this piece of Platonic geometry. So it's like, again, it's like not supposed to be moving, but it makes it feel like there's some action happening. I've had, I think this one had a name at one time, but I've forgotten it. Yeah, so this was, last year I made this one, and it started off as like this sort of arc kind of holding this piece of energy, and sometimes it looks kind of like an animal. Sometimes it's just like something else. It's like, I don't know, it's just kind of nice to try out like different shapes and people draw their own conclusions from it, you know.
This is, all your art is multi-dimensional, so you walk around and you get a different piece of art from a different position.
Right. You know, and it's like, there's other artists that, you know, have made metal artwork, like David Smith, who's a famous metal artist, and he made stuff in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. And I saw a piece of his one time, and it was like, I think it was this one, Australia, and you always see it in a art book as like, almost looks like a bird. And you walk 90 degrees to it, and it's a totally different thing. So, I mean, Picasso was kind of getting at that too with art. He would make sculpture that looked like a lady or a bird, this famous Chicago piece of public art. But I don't know, I kind of feel like David Smith sort of had this greater idea of how, you know, abstraction from different views makes you see different things. It's like when you're driving down the road and there's a log that all of a sudden always looks like a bull or a horse or something, or a rock. So it's sort of an ancient tradition, because I think people name natural objects, or they name abstraction, they name it things like, oh, that looks like a sleeping bull or something. And so it's sort of this kind of an old idea, like right at this one perspective something looks like something, and another it might look like something else. So sort of like the mythos of like art we've been doing for a long time is the civilization. So yeah, so I mean, this sculpture sort of started off as like just sort of like a triangular table, and the legs grew out, and then I flipped it over and then made it stand taller, so it became this kind of anthropomorphic table kind of turning. And now it's more like a plant. And of course, like, you can kind of see the starburst on one side, or an explosion, and then this thing's growing out of one side. It's just nice to see them from different angles. Yeah, this is sort of like a growing cart, like it's on wheels, and like the fender's kind of growing out over the wheel, and it's just sort of about like following the form and kind of making it dense and adding layers and kind of thickening it up and letting the kind of like shape of things probably like a few parts on it to move. So you know, it's kind of like a cool thing to do. Is like it's not so much kinetic in the wind. It's sort of like it has the opportunity to move, and then you go by it the next day and you're like, wait, that's different. This sculpture kind of evolved from like the idea of like what happened out at the county landfill, and it's sort of, you know, a few pieces are put together, and I'm sort of creating like, I was thinking kind of an animal, and then it got some jaws on the front, and it was on the table, and it needed a little bit more height, and so it just sort of started to grow, and it grew a couple legs, or grew 4 legs, and walked off. So sort of like sometimes the process kind of creates like, no, I need that up higher, and this thing down the bottom, and just sort of like let it do its thing.
Is there something you're trying to communicate with this piece?
It's sort of a whimsical thing, you know? I don't know, it's like, I've never been really forceful about like what people have to like bring home from it, but I mean, it's kind of the idea of art, is to let people kind of draw their own conclusions, because it's like, I mean, I didn't write a book on it because I'm not a writer, so it's like...
Okay.
Now this piece has been around for a while. It like went through a few changes. The foot got a little bigger once the part broke off. But yeah, it's at times this just looks like a wave when you're like, but like the head is flat. It's like when you drive in, you just see this like arc of metal with this action happening, and then when you're looking at it this way, it definitely looks like someone's standing there with their arm. So it's sort of like, kind of like trying to make gesture out of junk, you know. And I mean, sometimes it's not always scrap metal that I'm after, or the piece itself, it's the shape of it. So you can make it do different things, curves, and
You want to tell me a little about the gate?
well, I kind of wanted to do a tree for the front, and so, but I wanted to do something a little unconventional with the bracket, so I just curved some pieces and sort of created this archway, and then kind of added these gears in the bottom, because it's sort of like, it seems like old country fences and old farm estates, people love like the whole putting wheels in, sort of the design element. And then I wanted to do just like twisted up all this square tubing. Square tubing is really fun to twist. It makes all these knots and things, so it just makes it look like kind of oak. So now this piece kind of started out and like it kind of got to a point where it like there was some good balance, and it was kind of like, you know, sometimes it's like it's okay to just stop, you know, it's just like kind of action coming up. So kind of could be a person, just kind of about balance. There's like tension between these and these nozzles here. So I've made a few of these cube things, sort of like taking the, you know, the number 2 platonic solid to speak the cube and sort of adding balance to it. And then, you know, when you spin it, the geometry just kind of makes this almost like an octahedron, and you see these curves on the edge. So it's sort of like, you know, it's a really good example of space-time. You know, it's like when you change space and time, it does like weird visual things. So, you know, and then it could be like, this could be like controlling it, or and there's this part coming off the top. So, and then they're just, you know, there's no bearing or anything. It's just sitting in there.